Right, so we might get started and hopefully people will join us as they can. My name is Elizabeth Healy. I'm the care practice manager from Life Without Barriers. A big welcome to all of you making it here this evening. So we might just start with an acknowledgement. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we're all meeting on today. And I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also those emerging. I also acknowledge my gratitude that we share this land today, my sorrow for some of the costs of that sharing, and my hope and belief that we can move to a place of equity, justice, and partnership together. So thank you all again for joining us this evening. We at Life Without Barriers really appreciate it and understand the busy lives we all have. So again, thank you so much. I just thought we might talk about some housekeeping. So obviously you're all sitting here in your own home, or wherever you are. So I'm assuming you know where the toilet is. If you need to go, please get up and go. I ask if phones could be on silent for the time of this presentation. Also, if you have any questions, which we hope you do have a lot of questions, if you could place them in the chat box, and at some point towards the end, we'll get to those questions. Okay, let's see how we go through this. So a quick overview. So today we'll explore and answer to some of the questions we regularly hear from people who are very keen to find out if fostering is right for them. We're going to talk about Life Without Barriers and what we do in this space. We'll talk about foster care in general and see if that is all about being a part of your lifestyle. We'll talk about the children that come into care and the types of care that can be provided as a foster care, as well as the approach that we take in making sure children are supported in the best way possible. And we'll talk about becoming a foster carer and what that looks like. What are the steps that need to be taken to become a foster carer in Victoria? And like I said, sometime later, we'll talk about some of the questions that we commonly hear and get to some of the questions that you may have. Going. So who is Life Without Barriers? So it's pretty much Life Without Barriers is a leading organisation operated nationally and with a social purpose to establish connections with community members to change their lives for the better. We provide people with services and assistance they need so they can achieve their goals and maximise their potential and participate fully in the society as the way that they wish to participate. We regularly partner with communities that may be elders, governments and private sector to ensure we achieve positive long-term goals for the people we work with. So presently we work with over 23,000 individuals in over 400 communities. So we do provide a range of services such as foster care, family supports, disability support, aged care, mental health, refugee, asylum seeker support, and homelessness. So we like to think we tackle social issues head on. So what's important in terms of our values is that we try to work with people and services by building relationships which come first. So listening helps us to understand what people need and want. We are imaginative in our thinking and open to new ideas and ways of doing things. We are respectful and caring in our dealings. We see the big picture, but never lose sight of the details. We welcome diversity. We are responsive to needs, determined to get things done and do them well. We are courageous in our convictions and we stand up for what we believe in. So what is foster care? So foster care is a service provided to children and family who for a period of time cannot live safely at home with their families. It can be either short-term or sometimes until they're 18. So you might have heard foster care talked about as foster care, out-of-home care, or family-based care. So the Child Protection Department, the government in each state, is responsible for investigating, assessing, and identifying children and young people who are at risk, and along with the court system, decide that it is not safe for them to be with family for a period of time and that they need to come into foster care, so that hopefully they can have a safe home environment for them to stay. So the very first goal of foster care is that the children are reunified with their parents. So we all know that that's the best place where children can grow and thrive, is with their family of origin. So we're always looking for more people to open their hearts and homes to fostering. As you see there, with nearly 50,000 children unable to live safely at home in Australia at any given time, we are always looking for foster carers. The need that is always there and it never is completely filled. So why do children come into care? So common reasons for children needing foster care, as determined by the government department, is that they have suffered abuse, either physical, sexual, or emotional. They have experienced neglect, and that can mean, from not having a roof over their head, not being fed, clothed, not being supported in attending school. It can also be because of parental mental health conditions. It can mean because of parental death, so there's no parent, no family members able to care for them. It could also mean that the child has significant needs that their parents cannot fulfill at that particular time. Another area in terms of, it could be physical or it could be emotional, is they're exposed to family or domestic violence. So we know that, in providing I suppose, a safe home environment for parents in terms of neglect, social issues like poverty, lack of support systems. Most families, the majority of families in our community, have extensive networks of family and friends that when things go a bit haywire, a bit wrong, there's always that extra support to help them. But we do have a very small percentage of families in our community who don't have those networks and don't have others to rely on. So it can contribute to neglect being such a significant reason for children needing foster care. In terms of mental health, it might be that while the parent is addressing their mental health or their drug use issue, is that they may need to go into a hospital, or they may need to go to a rehab facility. So it's good that their children are able to be well cared for by foster carers while they address their issue, always with the view that the children will go back home to them. So who are children in care? So children in care are aged between 0 and 17. By the time they reach 18, they're legally adults. They should be able to stay connected to their culture and identity. So we know that for all children, regardless, having that sense of tradition, history, storytelling about relatives, about their background is always important, and is mostly significantly important for children in care, that they stay connected, because they lose that for a period of time, hopefully a short period of time. So any way that they stay connected is really important. Always, regardless of the status of children in care, whatever court order is issued, they have families that will always be important to them. When we think about families, we may not see them for a period of time. I know through COVID, there may be families internationally we haven't seen for a couple of years, but they've always remained important to us. This is extremely important for children who are in care. Children in care have all suffered trauma of some sort, regardless of, like I talked before, physical, emotional, or neglect. But just by the mere fact that they were taken from their families and placed in foster care can be trauma also. So we know that they are always going to have a level of trauma that they've experienced. What I did want to go back to is when we talk about culture, real significant is about backgrounds, call backgrounds, so culturally diverse, linguistically diverse. We will always try to match those families with carers that come from that same background, as I said, be it linguistic or religious. The other area that's of significance in terms of cultural identity in Australia is about the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. So there's specific regulations and placement principles enshrined in legislation that we should always maintain their connection to their local community, their mobs, their land. So we will always try to match those up. Sometimes they may not be able to live within their community. So we have carers who are non-Aboriginal, who are especially trained and competency in maintaining those links. So that's nationally a huge importance for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, children in care are ordinary kids. At the heart of it, children in care are ordinary, but have out of the ordinary experiences. So for children coming under the child protection system, it is a very, very small percentage of children in our whole of community, but their experiences are out of the ordinary. They still have hopes and dreams and aspirations like every child we know and love. So we hope that just their experiences don't just determine them, and identify them. So are there different types of foster care? Yes, definitely. This is one area where lots of people are really curious about. So when children come into care and types of fostering, no two children or families are the same. The same are no two foster care families are the same. So for children, they may need foster care for a night or two, for a few nights, or they may need it for a more permanent home, so long-term and permanent care. So Life Without Barriers will differ depending on where you are and what services we provide in that area. But the types of services you see in front are generally the most common. So respite care is usually planned in advance. It's usually typically for a weekend or a week during school holidays. We try to match up respite carers with what we call primary permanent carers. So sometimes they may just need a break. The great thing also about respite care for children is that it provides them with an opportunity to expand their networks, so mix in totally different networks and different families, which is also great. We've got emergency care. So emergency care is generally not planned. It is children could be removed straight away, 10 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's somewhere where the children need to be placed immediately because where they are right now is not immediate safe. So they may come for, like it says there, an hour, a day or two, but it can last up to 4 weeks. It allows the government department and the courts to make determinations and decisions about whether it needs a short-term order or a longer permanent term order. So short-term care is mainly around wanting to give parents an opportunity to address the issues as to why their kids had to come into care in the first place. It also may be needed for the government department to determine if a longer order is needed. So they may utilize a 6-month period, a 12-month period to see what are the long-term likelihoods of a child returning home. It needs to be, the type of care needs to be a place for children to feel safe and stable, for children to heal and build their relationships with family. So remember we talked earlier, just being removed, they've experienced trauma, they've experienced some form of abuse, but they still need to be able to maintain connections and relationships with their families. So the longer term care, 6 months plus, is really a commitment to support children toward adulthood. So that's around the age of 18. It focuses on permanency and more stability. It does not necessarily mean forever, but sometimes children in long-term care will not be reunified for their family. So I just thought we might talk about what's our approach to foster care. So we believe it's important to use evidence to guide how we provide the best opportunities for children and young people, and support the best possible outcomes for children and young people in our care. We've implemented an evidence-based informed therapeutic model of care that was developed from Cornell University in the States and is grounded in 6 principles. Losing my spot. So really a bit like our values that we talked earlier. So it guides us through how we work with children and their families. It focuses on our relationships we have with children and also with their carers, about building trust. There's meaningful relationships to help foster emotional and social confidence. We look at developmentally focused. So we match the strategies for change. So where children are developmentally at, not necessarily where they are in age. We look at trauma informed. So looking at where children are at from their trauma experience and what they need to help heal and thrive and grow. So family informed, I've said it a few times, involving family and supporting culture and community connections is really important. Competency, so we look at supporting children while they're healing and while they're thriving. They are also developing skills, knowledge, and attitudes. They need to negotiate everyday life. And then ecologically, so it's really about having that caring and supportive environment that models to children how to care for themselves and others. As I said, it's a real evidence-based model that's been well researched and has been around a while and works really well. So what is the most important role of a foster carer? So you'll see there's a couple of different stories, 3 of them there. My colleague Louise will share the links with you so you can look at them and listen to them at your leisure. But we need carers with attitudes and beliefs that we know are good for children. So if you think about our values, you think about our care program, it's looking at all those values and beliefs and way of working. It'd be really good to, at your leisure, to go through some of those, and they really talk about firsthand experience. So attitudes of a great carer. So we need carers with attitudes and beliefs that we know are good for children. And some may seem obvious, but they're not always easy to find. So it's really good to have plenty of time to spend with a child, a young person. We want carers who will help children return safely to home. So I talked earlier that is the best place for children to be brought up in. We believe in children, and all children will do well if they get the right help, care, and support. So carers who want to share their home and resources with children who need help. We also, a great carer is someone who's trying to understand why children do certain things. So have that curiosity, go back to our values, have that curiosity as to who they are and how come they behave and feel the way they do. We need carers who are willing to help children to manage tough feelings, so tough feelings of missing their family. So lots of children who are removed feel responsible for breaking up their family. So they need time to come to terms with those tough feelings, but also, regardless of how badly they might have been treated or whatever they've been exposed to by their families, they will still always miss them. Also, carers who believe it's important that children will feel included in your own family. So although they may be in foster care, and we're all working towards them going back to their own family, we want to give them experience of a really good nurturing family. So we don't want them to feel that they're labeled or separate. They want to feel like part of your family. So it'd be great if we have carers who are able to have that approach. So really, at the end of the day, it's patience, acceptance, commitment, flexibility, and time to spend with, to go through the tough times with kids, but also a commitment to supporting the child to strengthening family relationships. So the other, we're going to write. So who can be a carer? So carers come from all different backgrounds, just like all families do. So carers can be partnered or single, with or without children, from all backgrounds and all cultures. So your ability to care for and nurture the children is what really matters. Specifically within Victoria, you must be over 21. We ask that you have some relevant life experience in terms of children. So you don't necessarily have to have your own children, but it's good that you have some understanding and able to demonstrate. Maybe it's with nieces or nephews, or maybe it's within your work area. We ask that you're well and healthy. We ask that you have a regular source of income. Those two areas are really about that you're having kids come into a home that are going to be stressed and traumatized. So it's really beneficial that you're not overly stressed in terms of your health and well-being, or overly stressed about finances. As I said before, come from any culture, faith, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, or gender identity expression. So before, single or in a relationship, you must be willing to undergo background checks. So there are background checks in terms of criminal matters, but also child protection matters. As I said before, with or without children in your home, you don't have to own your own home, you can rent it. However, what we will be looking at is this stability in that home, be it privately rented, public housing. You have a spare room in your house. So what we find with children coming into care, if we think about for ourselves when we're going to stay with people, we really appreciate having our own room. So a child coming into care, having their own room is really important. It is also important in terms of them having some space. So some place of solitude when things become overwhelming them is really good for them to have some space they can go to. We ask that you have a car and a license. That main area is because lots of children coming into care will have lots of appointments. They also need to get to school, so getting there back and forth is really important. Notwithstanding getting out and about and even just having some fun. And that everyone within your household needs to be active and willing. So it's not just about one person who's putting their hand up to be a foster care. Everyone in the household as an adult needs to be willing to participate in this process, and that includes willing to undergo background checks. It can also mean people who are regular visitors. So if you have someone who comes and stays, 3-4 nights on a regular basis, they would have to undergo checks as well. So it'd be really good to kind of check in with your family that they're all willing to partake. So the next bit is about steps to becoming foster care. So the main areas following on from this session will be, if you haven't already done so, is to make an inquiry. So that's giving us, and we'll have these details available to you, but also in the chat box, is by you can complete a callback form. At the end of this session, one of the PowerPoint slides will give you the email address, but also the telephone number to call. So you can talk to one of our professionals and ask any questions that you have. They will, no question is a silly question, no question is an odd question. It's really important in taking the step that you ask as many questions as possible. They'll also guide you through an initial phone interview and really just checking that it is the right space for you and your family as well. So the next step after that all comes through is we will organise a home visit. So that'll either be in person or via Zoom to talk through making an application. So that gets you started with the background checks for all applicants and household members, like I said, 18 and above. We do a lot of checks, and as you would appreciate, if we've taken children from a harmful home environment because it's not safe for them, we need to ensure they're not going into another harmful home environment. So that all starts with these checks. So the next part is around training. So we have mandatory training set down by the government that you need to attend. There'll be introductory training in terms of what children care need, how to work as a team member, how best to care for traumatized children. So within our state, that's 8 modules of training, that we do on a monthly basis. We'll work with you on how best to do that. Sometimes we can accommodate different circumstances, so whether it's one-on-one, but we prefer to do group training as we find other people asking questions can be really good questions that you never thought of, but you actually really like the answer. So having other people ask questions is really insightful. Sometimes when I'm running training, the question the person asks is the first time I've heard it. And I have to say, I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. So I really value any questions. So that's our training's just a real buzz for me. And for most participants, we hear it's a real buzz for them. But it gives you that grounding as to what it's really like in our system and what it's really like for children, what it's the requirements on you, but also the core requirements on government and also on Life Without Barriers. Once you finish that training, you will then be allocated to one of my care assessors who will meet with you. So this is step-by-step assessment process, which is also mandatory by the government. And that is a series of interviews that we'll do with yourself, all household members, including any children that you have. And that is really looking at exploring your capacity of being able to provide that high quality of care, working with care teams, working with families of parents, that kind of stuff to see if it really fits for you. At every part of this process, it really is an opportunity for you to honestly reflect on that this is really what you want to do and how you want to go down it. It can take a process from the time that you make your first application. It can take 5 to 6 months to go through the whole journey. It is also a period of time where sometimes applicants, after going through training, want to be put on hold. So they just want a month or two to really reflect on, is this the way we want to go? We really respect that. We really value people who put their hand up for being a foster care, but also say, I really need some space to think about this. And we'll always check in with you. We'll always negotiate with that. But this is a huge step that you're taking. It's a huge step for children to be supported to go into strange people's homes. So we want to make sure we do the best training and assessment process as possible. And that's where we really value your honesty, your genuineness to really go down this journey with us. And the final step is up here, it says approval. In our state, it's you will be accredited. So our assessors do a whole document. It can be about 80 to 100 pages long. You get to read it. You have to sign off on that it's true and correct. That then is presented to a panel, which is inclusive of ourselves, but also the department, who are the final people who sign off and accredit you. And once you're accredited, you're off and running. We want to get you fully on board. You'll be assigned a case manager who will fully support you and be there for you. And I think we're coming up to some of our most frequently asked questions that talks a bit more about the kind of support we'll provide. So I might just go through those. These are the most common questions. Hopefully, if you haven't put them in the chat box, these answer some of your questions. If you have, here's some of the answers for you. So I am single, can I be foster care? Most definitely. We have single parents in our community, we can have single carers. So like I said before, families come in all shapes and sizes, so do our foster families. We are a same-sex couple, can we foster? Definitely. Life Without Barriers values diverse community foster carers. Also valuing and respecting and supporting diverse couples, like a same-sex couple, can be really beneficial for a young person who also may be going through areas of identity, having same-sex couples role model how to go through that is really supportive of their identity for young people. So definitely want all backgrounds, all diversity. Can I foster even though I don't have children? Yes, definitely. We know that having experience of interacting and caring for children is useful, but learning how to respond to children in care therapeutically can be gained in many other ways than parenting. So having the personal attributes that I talked earlier is what makes a good carer, not necessarily that you've parented your own children. So do I need to have a spare room? Yes, I talked about this earlier. This is really important. People sometimes think they can have a child in care come and just share a bedroom with their own child. You know, one, a child in care needs their own space, but it's also we don't want to impact negatively on your own child having to share with a child in care, as that may develop, you know, some levels of animosity, especially in the initial stage if it's long term and they've been there for a number of years and have developed a close relationship with your own child. It might make sense to share a room, but that always has to be done in consultation with your case manager, the department, and see how they're traveling. Sometimes if you have a sibling group, it might be beneficial that a sibling group of two do share a room for a period of time because they want to stay connected. They want to stay in close proximity to their sibling. So we kind of balance it up, but that's the areas that we talk about, but definitely within your home, first and foremost, need to have a spare room. Do I have to own my own home to be with foster care? No, we talked about this before. However, what you do need to demonstrate to us, and this is through the assessment process, is a safe and suitable, stable home. So what we want to make sure is that you're not going to be, if you're renting, you're not going to be evicted in the next couple of months, because that means the child has to be moved again. We also get a bit concerned, you know, we don't tend to place children if you're looking at making major renovations to your home. So if you're making major renovations in the next 12 months, we'd probably put that off in terms of becoming foster carers. Also, if you're going to be moving to a new home that is kind of out of the area, that would have an impact. can I have my own children and foster other children? Yes. Your family situation is considered when making the decision about the age level of the children that you may foster. We tend to, generally speak, like to have children in care placed with you that are younger than your children. As you can imagine, older children, there might be power battles, they're, fighting over toys and stuff like that. So we don't want to cause any major disruption, as you wouldn't, to your own children. So, but it'll be an area that we will talk to your children about what they think about having a child come and live in their home, which leads to, will all my family be involved in the assessment process? So yes, everyone in the household will be part of the process. The child is coming into your family home, so the family need to be fully on board with the decision. Like I said, children will be interviewed. Obviously, it's done as age appropriate. So it's really just checking how much they know about a child coming into their care, how they will feel about that. We'll also talk to your children about what are routines in your home, what are some of the fun things you like to do, what kind of discipline usually happens in your home, because that's really important. One, how our care principles, our care approach in terms of therapeutic intervention. But also it's about really making that decision to be a foster care. So just making sure I'm covering all my bases, but if not, make sure you put those questions in the chat box. So how are children matched to foster carers? Well, that starts by getting to know you well, and everyone in your home, in your household, getting to know well. We do a very thorough match process between children and carers. So we want to make sure that we match the child's needs with your skill set, with your experience, with your availability of time, so that it's a really good fit for your family to help create a sense of belonging for the child, but also a really good fit for the child. So there is a process that does occur. Also during the assessment process, and it'll begin in the training, you'll have some introduction, we'll talk through, different ages. We'll talk through whether you want to do respite only, emergency, short term. We'll have lots of carers who just want to say straight up long term. We'll talk about the age matching. So, looking at the uniqueness of your children and how that matches. So at every step from training through to assessment and then placement matching, this is all considered and discussed. You may not know some of your unique skill set yet and some of your great talents, but let me tell you, through the assessment process and beyond, we would really work with you to identify your strengths and really celebrate them. Because sometimes people don't get that until they go through a process like this, or sometimes having a child with trauma experience coming into their lives, do they really get to know, I'm pretty good at this, I'm pretty skilled. So we will always want to celebrate that. So can I choose the age and gender of the child? Pretty much what I've just talked about. Like, assessors will work with you about that fit, your skill level. So yes, you can definitely say, I only want girls, 6 to 10, because that may match really well because your own daughter, so forth and so on. Or you may have no children, but you've got a niece in that general age group. So we will definitely want to keep in mind any of your specific preferences, and we'd want to work with that as well. So we don't want to set you up for failure. We don't want children to be set up for failure. We really want this to work. We really are committed to children who need that safe haven for a period of time. So we want to really see you as the best foster carers you can be. Let's go next. So, do children in care have ongoing relationships with their family? In most cases, yes. We talked earlier about how it's important to maintain those connections, whatever that looks like, and forever period of time that children or care are coming to stay with you. So the connections may be storytelling, maybe photos, it may be phone calls, it may be supporting a child to attend supervised visits. Anytime about relationships and connecting with families is initially at the discretion of the department. So we work as care teams to the best way to support that. But sometimes it can be just having a photo of their parents next to their bed that that they can talk to. They might even show, you know, have photos of their family on an outing, and there can be storytelling about that. So sometimes that just helps with that connection. So looks different depending on the child and depending on their circumstances. So this is a really good question. What happens if the placement isn't working out? So yeah, sometimes that happens. So stability is key for children in order to do well and thrive. We know that it's not in a child's best interest to be moved continuously. So we do need resilient carers to be able to work with us. So the care team, which includes us, it can be professionals like psychologists, the school, and the department, to push through the harder days. There are going to be tough times, but sometimes that's about settling in. That's sometimes about getting to know the child. So when kids come into care, especially under emergency care, the department and Life Without Barriers may not know much about the child. So we would be reliant on carers to really tell us what's going on for that child. And that may mean tough times, but letting us know, and that can be about extra support. So, but if at the end of the day, the ending of placement has to happen, so because sometimes it does, we will be there for you as carers and your family and for the child. We always try to do really good placement endings, because regardless of whether you were there for a child for a night, for 6 months, or for 2 years, you will be in their memories for life. So we want to make sure that it ended on a positive note, sorry. But also they may want to connect back up with you later on. You may kind of want to maintain some kind of connection with them no matter where they go. So we try to do it in a positive, healthy way, even though it can be painful for carers and it may be painful for the child. I hate saying this cliche, but with pain we grow, and that's the same with children, as long as we're supported. So how long does the assessment process take? So as I've said earlier, is the assessment process with one of our carer assessors is a mandatory program, step by step, that's mandated by the government. So the process from the time that you apply, 5 to 6 months. However, we can try to work around that depending on circumstances, but that's usually around the average, 5 to 6 months. Any longer, it drags out for yourselves, and we don't want to drag it out for you. If you're really making a commitment to going down this journey with us, we really want to make a commitment to you. But what's important to remember, this is really important, that fostering is all about timing. If you never need to take a break from the process and revisit it later, that's okay too. We respect that and honor that. But I suppose we go through this process thoroughly, because we want to make sure children get the best possible, safe, nurturing home environment. Where am I up to? So what's really important, and I've only recently joined LWB, it's one of my favourite agencies in terms of foster care, and that is about the support that they provide to their employees, but also to carers. So you're never alone in the journey. It can be difficult to comprehend children's experiences, what they bring with them, especially when you're new. So it's really important that you feel supported and confident in your role. I can never find my mouse. So we offer extensive training. So we talked about after the application process, you will do training, so shared lives training within Victoria. It's 8 modules. We also have, once you become accredited as a carer, there's also specialist training in therapeutic crisis intervention. You'll also have great online learning modules on LWB that are available nationally. You'll have a case manager who will work through different training options. Like I said before, we'll identify your strengths and your skills along with you. Hopefully you all know them, but maybe there's some you don't. And we can match up what's the extra training you need. You also may need training in that therapeutic crisis intervention because it reflects the need of the child who's in your home. So as I said, we don't want to set you up for failure, and we don't want to set the child up for failure either. So the 24/7 on-call support. So we are there for foster carers 24/7, any time of the day or night, for any kind of advice, support, direction, especially in stressful situations. Child has done something, damaged some property, you can talk to us and we'll walk you through it. At the end of the day, never second guess calling our on-call service. It's there for support, and that's what we're there for. Financial support. So through the government, foster carers receive a tax-free foster care payment allowance. That is really to support the specific needs of that child, be it day-to-day, food. So it should cover most expenses like food, clothing, basic school stuff. Depending on your circumstances, you may be able to obtain some extra support through Centrelink, so family assistance, but that's on an individual basis. We also have specialist support. So we have specialist staff who are really trained in working with extreme situations of trauma and disability support. So that can be part of what you require, or you may put your hand up for. We talked about respite a bit. So we also see that as support for what we call permanent primary carers. So sometimes if you're a long-term carer, you just need a break. You've had a tough couple of weeks and you just need to have time where you can sleep in. I don't know, get your nails done, get your hair cut. Sometimes you don't have time to even get your hair cut. So respite is always available. Another is carer network. So we have different levels of carer network available through LWB. Pretty much, peer support, talking to carers who've been around for a long time are the best people to talk to. I can sit here as a specialist and talk to you about what carers like, but I think lots of things resonate for people when they actually talk to a carer who's been doing this for a while, on the ground, gets what it's like 24/7. So we really try to encourage some peer support networks. We also have a number of events during the year that is about bringing carers together. So we've got one main activity coming up in March that brings carers and the children together. The other, when we do the training module, the shared lives, we have a carer who attends and talks through her experience, and she's been around, I'm going to say, over a decade, and has cared for, along with her partner, a number of different young people and children, varying, respite, emergency, short-term and long-term. So she's a wealth of experience and knowledge. So do we have any questions from the chat box, Louise?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Elizabeth. Yes, we do. We have some great questions.
Great.
First
I
one.
can answer them.
You will. Some you've already covered. First one, would you recommend children and young people in foster care arrangement stay enrolled in their current school?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. I really like that one. So, okay, number one is the decision makers, depending on the court order, but initially is the parents. So it's guardians, parents who sign off on where a child is enrolled at school. We also would want to keep them in their same school to minimize disruption. Sometimes it's been the only stable, safe haven that the children have had. So keeping that consistent and familiar is really important. In saying that, if it was to go long term, and we're looking at the government is the guardian, there is possibility to change schools. But schools is a really big thing because, you know, you imagine generally kids stay 6 hours a day at school, a big chunk of time. It's their social network, it's their friends. You know, it may be the place that they've been academically having issues and it's the one place they feel supported. So we don't want to change that straight up. What else can I say about that? But we would want to work within the care team. So if it's an issue for you that you find with a child, just bring it to the care team and we'll discuss it on a child by child basis.
Excellent. Okay. Another great question. Can respite and emergency carers become short-term and long-term carers?
Yes, definitely. And we hope so. Like, lots of people do start off as respite emergency, and then once they've gotten a kind of experience of it and realize they do have a great skill set and a great strength, go, yes, I can do this short term, or they have the young person with them who starts off emergency, ends up being short term, ends up being long term, and no way do those foster carers want to give up on that child. They have developed great relationships. So most definitely, we talked about the support you would get from case managers. If it's about building up your skill set and your strength, that really identifying to be short-term, long-term, most definitely. Key thing for kids, regardless in being in care, is stability. So the quicker we can have them in homes where they're going to be there, you know, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years till they're 18, the better we know for them. They heal quicker, they heal better. They're long term, you know, they're more likely to finish school, they're more likely to go to university, they're more likely to have a job. So yeah, please, if you want to be short term, long term, we love that. Yeah,
we do too. Okay, another one. My question is, what if you get a child that you cannot handle? Is there support and further training? And then goes on to say, I have a client with severe autism who's nonverbal, who accesses respite care. Anything can set them off and can be difficult in terms of emotional, whoops, I've gone a bit too far up.
I know.
Emotional regulation. I don't know if I could look after a child with such high needs. What would happen if it wasn't a good match? I think you've spoke about good matches and how we do it anyway, but yeah.
So a real key part of the process in relation to that question is the assessment process. So the assessor is going to spend about 4 to 5 interviews with you, around 2 to 3 hours each. And it will really talk through what your capabilities are and what you're willing to also provide your home for a child in care. So if you recognize you don't have that skill set, that's okay. You don't have to take a child with nonverbal autism, or even if it's physical disability. You may be in a 2-story home, going up and down stairs is really difficult. If it's about you find that the placement match has not been what you had been assessed for or wanted, because at the end of the day, we're humans, we can make mistakes, just let us know, work through it. It really is important to always reach out and hands up. I need help. I can't do this on my own. Anyone who's worked with families and parents knows that no parent, no family can always do this on their own. Need help and support. So we need carers to definitely put up their hand saying, I'm not coping, I need help. It could mean extra training. It could mean, respite. But yeah, please just put up your hand and say, I need help. This is not working for me.
Excellent. Okay, moving on. I've got 2 young children. Will they be involved in the assessment? And I also don't want to foster babies. Am I able to foster children of a similar age to my daughters? They're 3, 4 years old.
Okay, so I'm just remembering all the parts of those questions. I never.
Yeah, 2 children. Will they be involved in the assessment?
Okay, so and they're like 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Okay, so they will be involved. The assessor will talk with the parents through what that will look like. So sometimes it's more of a play interview. We never pressure. If children aren't going to talk, we're not going to pressure them. But when we come to visit you, because we'll have to do a few home visits directly in person, we'll be noting how the interactions between your children and you and yourself and your children and the children. So even though they're younger, we may be using observations to inform how the household is. Okay, so the age of the child. So one of the things the assessor will go through is capacity. So we get your willingness, but it's being capable of managing competing demands. So definitely we would not ask someone to be caring for babies if they don't want to. So I suppose it's a process and more further conversation. So yes, it's possible to have the same ages, but it'd be definitely younger, but not young. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Elizabeth. I work full time. Is there some flexibility around working for people working full time? And is it okay to work full time?
Okay, definitely it's okay to work full time. Most of us in society have to. So, and that would become part of the matching, but also again, so your ability and capacity. So we would work through that. Lots of our carers work full time. I suppose it's within that full time, it's the flexibility around your workload. So an example, without scaring you all off, an example is lots of children traumatized find it difficult to sit still and engage in school. So they may be disruptive. The school may not know them and decides to suspend them, or you need to come and pick them up straight away. So it's that kind of flexibility. They can be in childcare, they can be before and after school care, and they be in vacation care. And those are decisions made as part of the care team. So definitely working full time, like any other parent.
Exactly.
Full time.
Can I be single living with a friend?
Ooh. So you can, however, that friend has to be part of the process. So they have to agree to having checks done. They will have to be part of the training and the assessment process. So we've talked about a household. So it's everyone in your household that have to go through the process. So imagine this, we have to be assured that when a child comes into care and is in your home, that they are in a safe, stable, nurturing environment. So everyone has to be checked.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. If children or young people are required to have private therapy, such as speech or psychology, is this funded by the carer?
Okay. So I know lots of private, you can get Medicare rebate if you have a referral from a GP. But what's really important about this one is that if we know the needs from the beginning, before you accept a placement, that they need this private therapy, we can negotiate as a care team to get some extra funding from the department to cover those specific areas. So it doesn't necessarily come out of the allowance that you receive, and it's not looked at that it has to come out of your own personal funds. It's just about how we negotiate it as a care team.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And they're interested in long term, which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, what are the usual cases or situations of these wonderful children?
The usual, oh my gosh, there is no usual.
Every case is different.
So I've been working in the sector for 20 years, and I worked for government for 10. So it comes in waves depending on the community expectations. So if you look at in the community over the last maybe 5 years, we've grown an awareness and an expectation about domestic violence, domestic and family violence. So that kind of changes how we view children in terms of what they need to have a safe, stable home. So if you imagine, I could ramble on about this. So what I suppose what I'm saying is the issues in terms of a child being traumatized is universal. The actual story about what they've experienced is unique. So, you know, but generally it is about domestic and family violence. So they may have been physically hurt accidentally, unintentionally during the violence, emotionally, psychologically harmed because they've witnessed a parent being hurt, neglect, mental health. Mental health can be a big area. Isolation, not having those support networks. I hope that kind of answers, but that's such a huge question. Down to
I know.
2 sentences is really hard.
I know some people will have to leave because it's gone 7 and a few have dropped out. So I just wanted to mention that I have just popped in a link, which is a call me back link. So if you click on that, then you'll get to speak to either me, because I will take you through the next process, or our national team. They'll do a screening with you. A few more questions, Elizabeth.
Yep.
We have a big friendly dog. Is that okay?
Yep. That your dog will become part of the assessment process. They won't be interviewed, but they will be observed. So we know animals can be great supports, especially around healing and therapy for kids who've experienced trauma. So we will, our assessors will look at that friendly. So what you mean by friendly and what we mean by friendly in terms of a traumatized kid can be 2 totally things. So they will be part of the assessment. But we'll also match, you know, you go through, we'll match that it's not kids who aren't scared of dogs. Some have been bitten by dogs. Some of the violence they've experienced has involved dogs. So definitely pets are fantastic. Pets are great, even if it's an aquarium, fish in an aquarium. Or a guinea pig. Guinea pigs are great, although they're not great to clean up after.
And that's it with the questions, Elizabeth. A lot of people have said thank you very much. They've enjoyed it. Most helpful.
Oh, cool. Okay, so where to from here? All those people who are left, but I know Louise put in the link. You know, there's our website, huge amount of resources and a great place to kind of get some background information. You talk to a foster care specialist, so there's our national information, but there's also Louise, who's been doing this a really long time. She's great for a chat, just like I am. So don't, you know, be great to get some information about her. If you're not ready just yet, which we totally respect, you can why not join our mailing list, and that just gives you up-to-date information about fostering, so some of our newsletter magazines. So it might be, you might be ready in a year, you might be ready 6 months. We're even happy if it comes to it's 5 years down the track. We would still love to hear from you. As I said earlier on, the need is so great and it never goes away. I'd like to think I could be a major change agent. I had my magic wand and no child is ever hurt by their parents or in their family home. This is never going away. We'll still need you, either today or in 5 years' time. So where we go. So that's it. There you go. Thank you so much. Sorry I went a bit over time, but thank you for sticking with us. Really appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you and look forward to being part of your journey with LWB. Thanks again.
Thank you. Good night.